Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's happening, man? Hope you guys are doing great. I know my day is going just fine. Well, check this out, man. If you would please join me in a moment of silence, followed by a serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers, and for those of us who are still bound down to that struggle that keeps us from moving forward in this toxic life that we live in, man. So yeah, if you would please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All right, well, let's get started, man. How's it going, man? Hope you guys are going good, man. It's going great. You know, it's been a little while since I threw out a video. I've been kind of busy with a lot of. I've been really, into my spirituality practice, man. You know what I mean? Really, digging into the Buddhist practice, you know what I mean? That's my journey right now, you know what I mean? And it works for me, right? So it's part of my recovery, not only the Buddhist practice, but also the practice of participating in peer support groups, man. You know what I mean? To me, participating in peer support groups is a big part of recovery. You know what I mean? And so that is one thing that I do. You know, it keeps me busy, and I have so many groups that I had to attend to, and different therapies that I do and stuff like that. So it kind of took me away from putting out a video, right? So, but nonetheless, I wanted to come today and give you guys a little something, and and what I want to do today is talk about part of what I've been studying, and that's the Dharma recovery, and in the Dharma recovery, there's the part that I want to talk to you guys today about is the part of wise understanding. It's part of the Eightfold Path in the Buddhist practice, and so what I want to do is the foundation of Buddhism is practicing the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, right? And the Four Noble Truths, let me just get that out, just so in case some of you don't know what it is, or maybe you do, or you forgot, or whatever, but just kind of get us, so that you guys can understand what I'm talking about. The Four Noble Truths is a foundation that the Buddhist principles are based on, and that is being coming to the terms that and awareness that there is suffering, and that's the first noble truth. The second noble truth is that there is a cause and effect to the suffering, and the fourth noble truth is that there is cessation in the suffering, in that you can ultimately attain enlightenment and nirvana through the cessation of suffering, which comes from the Four Noble Truth, in which that is that there is a way out of the suffering through the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is just a list of things that we live by. And they're basically just practices that you put into your life and live by them. And I'll read those off. What they are is wise, living through wise understanding, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effect, or ethics, and wise mindfulness and wise consciousness. And each one of those goes into depth with a definition to that. And I'm not going to get all the way into it. Maybe on another video we'll do some of them. But what I wanted to focus on today is the first part of the Eightfold Path, which is wise understanding. And you'll actually come to find out and this is just my personal opinion, that these things that the eightfold path is talking about is in a good kind of you can kind of compare it to the Hermetic laws in a sense, because the Hermetic laws do the same thing. You know, there's a cause and effect to the situation, right? To recovery, to there's something that there's a clinginess to it. There's an aversion. There's a craving, and ultimately through being greedy, ignorant, and untruthful, it will take you to this windy road of not being able to get out of that bondage, right? So, and it talks about all these things, talk about how your life will be affected and what you can do to maneuver your life in a good way so that you can have good karmic energy, because ultimately what you're doing in this eightfold path and in the Four Noble Truths and putting this into action in your life, that's the karma. You know what I mean? Because karma in Sanskrit terms ultimately means action, that you're doing this action. So if you're doing the action in this way, it's of a good, divine, faithful way, then the karmic energy that you receive from that, you know, is going to be of good nature, right? So it's just like anything else, man. If you put work into something in your life that's of a negative aspect and an evil aspect, then that's exactly what you're going to get out of that action. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing ever good that comes out of something like that, of something negative and evil. Is are you going to get something of good, divine, and beautiful, you know, results out of that? It just doesn't happen that way. That's just, you know, the Hermetic laws doesn't allow it, and that's the natural laws of the world, right? You know what I'm saying? And so yeah. But what I'm going to do is let me switch these glasses out so I can do a little reading here. And what I want to do is I'm going to read the Four Noble Truth in this path, because the Four Noble Truth is the one that intertwines the Eightfold Path, and then we'll go on and talk about the wise understanding in that. So what it says here is the Four Noble Truth is the path. And the Buddha taught that by living ethically, practicing meditation, and developing wisdom and compassion, we can end suffering. We create by resisting, running from, and misunderstanding reality. The Fourth Noble Truth is the path that summarizes the essential elements to recovery or awakening and leads to the ending of suffering. It provides an instructive practice for investigating and becoming aware of the condition responses we cling to. These are the 8 factors of the path. And that is, again, wise understanding, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. And it goes on to say that these 8 factors can be divided into 3 groups. And that's the wisdom group of understanding and intention. Second is the ethics group of speech, action, and livelihood. And the third is the concentration group of effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Each of us will understand the practice, each aspect of this Eightfold Path in our own way. You know, and we develop our wisdom, ethical practice, and concentration as far as we can in any given moment. We can, as we come to a deeper understanding of the Four Noble Truths, we are able to bring more effort and concentration to letting go of our greed, hatred, and confusion. Our ethical development will cause us to reflect more deeply on these sources of our unwise actions. And that is, you know, that to me, it's kind of, you know, puts it in you know, layman's terms, really, it's really a good definition of the practice of the Eightfold Path, because I mean, it's saying, you know, we're in the Four Noble Truths, we're able to bring more effort and concentration to letting go of the greed, hatred, and confusion. Because the greed, hatred, and confusion is part, and that's the ignorance in our mindset. You know what I mean? The ignorance of that, you know, we're clingy. You know what I mean? We're clingy people. We want to have control, and we want to take the easy way out in a sense, and we don't want to, you know, taking the hard way is in a sense right off the bat suffering. You want to do the least, eliminate the least suffering is the path that most people want to take. You know what I mean? So that's why, you know, a lot of us who are addicts of whatever it is, tend to gravitate towards that, because you feel in your own mind that that is giving you the most relief and the fastest relief of whatever it is that you're going through. You know what I mean? And by developing these 8 things in the Eightfold Path, in is what allows you to change, because ultimately you're practicing the wise understanding, the wise intention, the wise speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. And when you do that on a repetitive basis, it starts changing and transforming your mental thought process, because ultimately that's what we have to do to change our situation in recovery. You know what I mean? In the addiction and whatever it is that's keeping you bound down, the only way to change that is through your mental capacity. You know what I mean? And in those 8 things of the Eightfold Path, it's a way to do that. You know what I mean? And so it goes on to say the Eightfold Path is a way of life that each of us follows and practices to the best of our current understanding and capacity. The path can serve as both a religious and non-religious journey. For many people, their Buddhist practice includes prayer, worship, and ceremony. It is up to you to decide whether to include these practices as part of your recovery path. And that right there is a really, I like that part, because you don't have to be a Buddhist to practice Dharma recovery. You know what I mean? You don't have to practice. You don't have to practice any religion to practice Dharma recovery. You know what I mean? You don't have to be of any religion to practice wise understanding, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. You can do that regardless of your religious sect or whatever it is that you follow and practice. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of this whole thing, is that it fits right into anybody's lifestyle, to be honest with you. You just have to be open-minded, willing, and truthful to trying new things. You know what I'm saying? And when you do that, you know, you set yourself up for something that's going to be of positive and divine and beautiful results for you. You know what I'm saying? By doing stuff like this, you're not setting yourself up for failure. That's for sure. You're not setting yourself up to dig a deeper hole. That, you know, quite the contrary. You're doing this to elevate yourself up out of the suffering. You know what I'm saying? And do away with the suffering, you know, ultimately. And so it goes on to say the inquiry of the Four Noble Truths is understanding that recovery and the ending of suffering is possible. What is your path to recovery and ending the suffering of addiction? Be honest about your challenges you might face and the tools and resources you will use to meet those challenges. It goes on to say, what behaviors can you change to more fully support your recovery? And what does it mean to you to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha for your recovery? And, you know, these 3 questions is just, you know, these are questions that are put out there so that you can think about it. You know what I mean? So it's actually, you're actually taking action in a mental thought process here. You know what I mean? It's just not read this and you're good. No, you have to actually be involved in what you're saying and what you're thinking, in your actions, and where you want your life to go, how you want your mental thought process to be, what kind of things do you want to eliminate from your life. You know what I mean? And by answering questions like this and putting them into practice, you know what I mean, this is part of the of recovery. You know what I mean? This is the putting the boots on the ground and starting to, you know, tread your way through the mud. You know what I mean? Because ultimately that's what you're doing. You know what I mean? Because right now your life is just full of mud. You know what I'm saying? And you gotta you know, work your way out of that mud, man, to get to some, to, you know, the clear path, in a sense. You know what I mean? And the last part of that was that, what does it mean to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha for your recovery? That to me is really cool, because, you know, it doesn't mean that you're you know, looking up to this figure or whatever like that. No, what this means is that you're taking refuge in the Buddha. In other words, you're taking refuge in the Lotus Sutra, which is taking refuge in the practice of the Eightfold Path. You know what I'm saying? And you're taking refuge in the Dharma, which is the practice. You know what I mean? It's the practice and the wise, you know, things that you're getting from other people who are also practicing and who know the Dharma. You know what I'm saying? And you're also getting taking refuge in the Sangha for your recovery. And the Sangha is the community. Whatever community that you're going to involve yourself in, you want to take refuge in that. You know what I mean? If you know, if you're going to do Dharma recovery, it's good to get into a Dharma recovery group. You know what I'm saying? And they have those, you know what I mean? They're every city probably has a Dharma recovery. You just got to look for it. You know what I mean? And if not, you know, look for the videos like this one. You know what I mean? And if you need to, you know, I can send you a PDF of the Dharma recovery and you can practice it on your own. You know what I mean? Just, you know, shoot me a message and I'll gladly send it to you. You know what I mean? So it's just a good practice, and it's the practice that I take right now. You know what I mean? And it works for me. So, you know, if it works for me, I'm going to continue to share it, right? Okay, and then it goes on to say that the Eightfold Path, he goes, we found that it's useful to make inquiries and investigation a normal part of our everyday routine, especially when we're feeling uncomfortable emotions or facing tough decisions. We can take a moment to pause and sit with what we're experiencing, identify it, and simply allow it to be, with compassion and without judgment. Then use the Eightfold Path as a guide. Go inward and forward by asking yourself, how can I apply the Eightfold Path to what I'm feeling or to what I'm going through right this minute? You know what I mean? It also can be beneficial to use the different sections of the Eightfold Path as an end of day reflection also. So this is something that it's almost like you're taking inventory of your life. And some people in recovery need to do this on an hour-to-hour basis. And some people need to, you know, can do it on the daily, on the weekly, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But this is just taking inventory in the things of the progression of your life, and then, you know, maybe getting a notebook and jotting those down so that you have a log of your progression. You know what I mean? Which is a good idea, because, you know, believe it or not, when I journal, you know, I picked up a journal that I wrote like 7-8 months ago, and I'm reading it and I could see the transformation of something that I journaled, you know, yesterday. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good guide, and it's like a gauge, you know what I mean? And it keeps you motivated that you see that you're actually changing. You know, your mental thought process is changing, because ultimately when you journal things down, that's coming from your mind. You know what I'm saying? So it'll show you the maturity of your mindset, and which is a really good thing. And okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read to you now the wise understanding. And it says, wise understanding. As we engage in the world rather than withdraw from it, we can use wise understanding to live without clinging, attachment, or craving. By paying attention to our actions and the result of those actions, we can begin to change where our choices are leading. If we intend to act in ways that have positive results, and if we're aware of the true intention and the nature of our actions, then we'll see better results. Better meaning less suffering and harmless and less harm. The word karma in Sanskrit translates to our actions, create, and any intentional act, mental, verbal, or physical. It's kind of karma. Is it well, the mental and verbal or physical is a kind of karma. So I mentioned that earlier, that the karma in Sanskrit terms means action, and that means action in the things that you're doing in that eightfold path, which is going to be mental things, verbal things, and physical things. You know what I mean? And when you do things of that nature in a positive, spiritual, and good karmic way that is, of a divine nature, then ultimately the results in turn there will start reflecting that. You know what I mean? And it goes on to say, skillful or wise action strengthens our sense of balance, kindness, and compassion, loving, and equanimity. When we act unskillfully or unwisely, we steal, lie, take advantage of somebody else, or cause intentional harm based on our own cravings or delusions, it creates an immediate sense of imbalance. It fights with our intention to avoid harming others. Karma is determined by our intention and applies to any volatile or purposeful action. The result of our volitional actions may be an increase in our happiness and may lead to additional suffering, I'm sorry. And there is no actor apart from action, and there is no action without intention. It says unskillful actions leave us less able to meet the next challenge or pain we face. For example, when we steal, we have to immediately justify to ourselves why our greed was more important than the harm we caused by taking. We must create a cover story, hide our actions, and adjust to the fear of getting caught. Ultimately, if the theft gets discovered, we might have to deal with financial or legal consequences or face a lack of trust from our community. Similarly, when we're dishonest, we immediately focus on energy in maintaining the untruth. When we emotionally carry the potential pain that is caused to others and ourselves if the lie is revealed. This understanding of karma rests on the insight that we are very experience of happiness or misery. It says that, let me read that again. This understanding of karma rests on the insight that we are responsible for our own happiness and misery, and there is a cause to every experience of happiness or misery. From the Buddhist point of view, our choices, which are dependent on our present mental, moral, intellectual, and emotional conditions, decide the effect of our actions. If we act skillfully, with understanding and compassion, it is possible to cause positive, beneficial effects for ourselves and others. If we act with unskillful intentions, we cause our own suffering. And that to me goes back to like I mentioned earlier, to the Hermetic laws. You know what I mean? To the natural Hermetic laws. If there's an effect, there's going to be a cause to that effect. You know what I mean? And it's just, if you do something bad like stealing, and as far as in an addict's perspective, you automatically want to, justify why you're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So that you yourself don't feel this shame or this bad thing, right? So you want to say, no, I had to do this because of this, or it's okay because, they have insurance, so it's not a big deal, stuff like that. And then it goes on to say, this doesn't mean that we always have control over our experiences. No matter how skillfully we act, the external world, people, places, things, social structures might not give us what we want. This does not mean we have bad karma or that we have failed. It just means that we're not in control of everything and everyone. The point is that regardless of what the outside world throws at us, we're responsible for how we respond to it and how we tend to our internal world. At the end of the day, we have the choice whether to go to bed as somebody who acted wisely and compassionately or as somebody who didn't. It is important to note that being responsible for our own happiness and suffering doesn't mean we're responsible for pain inflicted on us by others or by circumstances out of our control. Many of us have experienced victimization, oppression, and trauma through no fault of our own. The pain from these experiences should be met with compassion, understanding, and wise boundaries, not minimized, invalidated, or pushed away. In recovery, we learn that we don't have to add an extra layer of suffering to this pain. We begin to heal rather than let these experiences or actions of others control and limit us. Without discounting or ignoring the ongoing effects of trauma in our lives, we begin to understand that our responses when that trauma comes up for us can change our experience of suffering and happiness. The Buddhist perspective is that our present mental, moral, intellectual, and emotional circumstances are the direct result of our actions and habits, both past and present. How we choose to respond when confronted with pain or discomfort will change our ability to skillfully deal with the suffering when it arises. We can also take solace in the fact that we're not alone, that every person has difficult and unpleasant experiences. It's how we respond to the pain that determines our experience. And so there you go. That is a little bit of definition and kind of what wise understanding is, and how to put that application into your own life, into your own recovery, into your whatever it is that you're addicted to, into your problems. You know what I'm saying? And this, it's just a way to live. You know what I mean? And it just goes back to say, like it said, if you can accept the fact that you've gone through trauma, that you've gone through suffering, that suffering is going to be there regardless of what we do in our lives. There's always going to be some amount of suffering to the way we live. And like it said there at the end of that, how we respond to that pain, suffering, trauma all depends on oneself. You know what I mean? And when I say that, it means that the actions that come out of your mental thought process are going to be the actions that you do. And if your thought process, if your mental capacity is filled with nothing but negative thoughts and evil thoughts and just sadness and depression and being angry and being greedy and ignorant and just all of those types of things, well, those are the types of responses that you're going to give out. You know what I'm saying? So what we're doing here is we're trying to gradually change your mental thought process. And the way to do that is by practicing wise intention, by practicing good, karmic, divine things in your life. And that means for me, just personally, just to give you my own personal way of what I do and the things that I, involve in my life so that my actions can reflect that, is I do a lot of prayer, I do a lot of chanting, and I do a lot of meditation. You know what I mean? And because I do that, and I not only that, but I do a lot of peer support groups, I do therapy, I do a lot of reading, and I do a lot of studying on the practice, and I do a lot of studying on the not only the practice of Buddhism, but the practice of recovery. You know what I mean? I read a lot of things, and how to change the mind to be of a good divine and karmic mental thought process. Because when you start doing these types of things, you get wiser. You know what I mean? You get wiser, and you know what to stay away from. And you know, I honestly could tell you that if I didn't involve myself in a sangha, in other words, if I didn't involve myself in a peer support group, a community, my recovery would probably not be where it is today. And by involving myself in these communities has allowed me to work on that wise intention, that wise understanding, and know, you know what I mean? Know how to react to things in a good and beautiful karmic and divine way. You know what I mean? With good energy. You know what I'm saying? And for me, it works. You know what I mean? For me, the things that I do in my recovery, it works, and that's by studying the Dharma recovery book, by studying the Threefold Lotus Sutra, by reading other reading materials that have to do with 12-step programs, addiction, and mental thought process. You know what I mean? How does the mind change, and how can you move past adversities in a good way? You know what I mean? And share that with others. You know what I mean? And so if I continue to involve myself in all these beautiful things like that, well, then that's what my actions are. So that's what I like to share on my channel, and I wanted to share that with you guys today. As part of just a little bit more study on the Dharma recovery, man. Because it's just another way, man. It's just another way to recovery. It's another program. And it's a good one. For me, I can resonate with it, and I can see eye to eye with it, because, not to knock off on any of the other 12-step programs, because they all are good. You know what I'm saying? And I've gotten sobriety time out of dealing with the other programs, and I'm grateful for that. But this is just one that works for me at the present moment in my life. You know what I mean? And perhaps it could do the same for you. You know what I mean? So that's ultimately what I like to do here, is just share positive, encouraging stories and practices that could help somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that at one point in time in my life, I heard somebody talking about their practice, and that gave me many years of sobriety. So I'm grateful for that. So that's why I like doing the same thing and sharing it. Hopefully that I can give somebody else a golden nugget to continue their sobriety, and to continue in their journey, in hopes that they get good karmic and divine energy and all that kind of stuff, man. So yeah, but anyway, if you would please at this time, if you please give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, I'd greatly appreciate it. If you would please hit that subscribe button, and just know that when you do hit the subscribe button, man, it don't cost you a thing, but you know what? You'll be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSDs, childhood traumatic experiences, trauma, depression, anger issues, drug addiction, alcoholism, suicidal thoughts, all of those types of things, my friends, because I have dealt with all of those things at one point in time in my life, and guess what, man? I know a way out, and my way out could be your way out. So guess until the next time, when the smoke clears, I am the recovery plug.